You already know when it comes to this show. Nothing ever goes smoothly, and the drama just finds a way to follow these cast members no matter where they go. But this time right here, it was one for the books. Let me tell you right now, you do not want to click away because the way Nell Fletcher and LaTisha Scott went head to head felt like a shark circling its prey. And by the end of that little coffee shop meet, it was clear somebody got bit, and it wasn't Nell. Stay locked in because I'm going to break this all the way down. And trust me, the way the truth came out had even producers rolling that bean footage. And we all know when producers have to step in and roll the tape, it's about to get messy. Now, let's start from the top because Tisha came walking into that little meeting with Nell like she had it all figured out. And to be fair, she looked stunning, hair laid, dress on point, makeup flawless. She was rocking this mustard olive kind of color, which, let's be real, is not a color everybody can pull off, but she did. And that's the thing about Tisha, right? She always shows up looking like $1,000,000. But looking good is one thing, walking into a situation with a false sense of confidence is another. Because while she was sipping on that caramel macchiato, Nell Fletcher was already sitting there like a calm storm, ready to put everything on the table. And I have to say it, Nell didn't waste a second. Came straight out the gate, calling out Tisha about her behavior at that NDA fiasco and especially about running up on her husband, Chris Fletcher, with her hands all in his face. Now, here's where it gets juicy. Tisha looked shocked, like she wasn't expecting Nell to start with that. But hold on, let's rewind. Because wasn't it Tisha herself who once made the rule that if any of the women had issues with each other, they should come directly to each other instead of running to the group? Exactly. That's the very rule Tisha put into play. But the moment Nell decided to use that same playbook, suddenly Tisha was caught off guard. And you could see in her confessional, she was already backtracking, saying she didn't even remember it going down like that. But come on now, Kimmy already clocked her a few scenes back for doing the exact same thing, hands flying, walking up on Chris, laughing it off like it was no big deal. So Nell wasn't lying. She was just putting a mirror up to Tisha's face. And here's the thing that killed me. Tisha could have squashed the whole thing right then and there with one simple line. All she had to say was, "Girl, I didn't even realize I came off that way. Maybe I had too much Don Julio. My bad." Boom. Accountability done. Everybody could have sipped their coffee and moved on. But no, instead of just admitting she might have been doing the most, Tisha doubled down, acting like she had no idea what Nell was talking about. She was appalled. She was defensive. She was really trying to play dumb. But that's when you know somebody hit a nerve. And Nell, child. Nell was calm, collected, and circling like a shark. She said, "When was the first time we ever put your husband's name in our mouths?" And that's when Tisha fumbled, 'cause she brought up Atlanta, saying Nell and Chris were dragging Marsau's name. And that's when Nell pulled out the receipts. Because let's be real, it wasn't Chris or Nell who dragged Marsau into the mix, it was Marsau who used Chris as his alibi. Talk about backfiring. And you already know the producers love a good messy moment. They rolled back the footage, showing Marsau himself telling Tisha he was with Chris Fletcher in Atlanta, while Tisha was crying in the car asking where he was and who he was with. That footage was the nail in the coffin because it proved Nell wasn't lying. Chris didn't put himself in the situation. Marsau dragged his name in there trying to cover himself. And you could see it in Tisha's face. She cracked. Confidence she walked in with. It's gone now. Nell didn't even have to raise her voice. She didn't flinch. She didn't get emotional. She didn't let Tisha throw her off balance. She just sat there calmly, telling her side of the story, saying, "Look, I was with my husband. I knew where he was, and I even had him bring me takeout from the Atlanta fish market." Meanwhile, Tisha was huffing, puffing, and eventually storming out like she was the victim. But let's be real, walking out like that only made it look like she didn't believe Marsau herself. Because if she really believed her husband, she would have sat there calm as ever, sipping her caramel macchiato and letting Nell talk. And let's not forget, this ain't even the first time Tisha tried to flip the script on Nell. Y'all remember that lunch scene with Nell and Marsau where Tisha leaned across the table asking Nell if she had ever dealt with infidelity? That was Tisha poking, trying to get under Nell's skin. And you know Nell clocked that from way back. That's why when this coffee shop meet happened, she wasn't about to let Tisha spin it. She stood her ground, and she did it flawlessly. Now, let's talk about Marsau for a second, because his name was all over this mess without him even being there. It was his lie, his alibi, that dragged Chris Fletcher into this whole situation. And if we're being real, Marsau has a long history of playing these kinds of games. Remember the whole back photo situation? It's the one that looked just like Marsau's. Head, shoulders, and back. And everybody, including Wanda. Tisha's own mama was out here saying, "That looks like Marsau." Even Wanda didn't buy his story. And now, here we are again with another alibi falling apart. And this is where I have to say Tisha needs more therapy sessions. Because for somebody who claims she doesn't believe the rumors, she sure does act like they cut her deep. If you don't believe it, then don't let it shake you. Sit there, sip your drink, and move on. But the fact that she stormed out, raising, her voice getting emotional lit, just shows she still doesn't fully believe Marsau. And that's the real issue. Meanwhile, Nell was cool as a cucumber. She even said it herself. Dealing with Tisha feels like dealing with one of her grown kids. That's the level of patience she had. And honestly, she won the entire scene just by staying calm. The polls even showed it 72% of viewers said they were on Nell's side, while only 4% sided with Tisha. And let's be real, that's not a small margin. That's the audience speaking loud and clear. But let's not ignore the ripple effect here, because if Tisha is struggling this much with her marriage behind the scenes, you already know this isn't the last time it's going to blow up on camera. Marsau's games keep dragging other people into the drama. And Tisha keeps trying to defend him until the walls close in and she cracks. And every single time, it makes her look like she doesn't believe him either. Now, let's be real, this whole situation didn't just show us Nell and LaTisha's issues, it highlighted a bigger problem within the group. These ladies have been around each other long enough to know when something is personal and when something is just messy. But the way things unfolded proves that lines are getting blurred. Instead of handling things like grown women behind the scenes, it turned into another public blow-up that everybody and their mama now has an opinion on. And let's not act like the fans aren't eating this up, because social media has been going wild with clips and commentaries since this aired. The funny thing is, LaTisha kept trying to act like she was above the drama, but her body language told a whole different story. You could literally see the frustration all over her face, and the more she tried to keep calm, the more it felt like she was about to snap. Nell, on the other hand, wasn't backing down either. She stood on what she said and wasn't about to let LaTisha rewrite the narrative. This is where things always get heated, because when two strong personalities clash, there's no way to keep it cute for long. And let's not forget how this ties back to Marsau and Chris Fletcher. Because at the end of the day, the men may act like they're staying out of the women's business, but their names keep getting pulled into the middle of it. Every time the ladies have conflict, somehow it circles back to the husbands, and it makes the drama even messier. The Fletchers and the Scotts have history, but the more these arguments keep happening, the harder it is to tell if that history is helping hold them together or pushing them further apart. Another thing worth pointing out is how quick the conversation spiraled. One minute it was about clearing the air, and the next minute it turned into bringing up old wounds and accusations that weren't even supposed to be on the table. That night, that's classic love and marriage. Huntsville, right there you think you're just going to get one scene of resolution? And instead, you end up with 3 new storylines and 5 new arguments to follow. This show never fails to deliver when it comes to drama layered on top of drama. But here's where it gets tricky. LaTisha has a pattern of wanting to control the narrative. She doesn't like when somebody checks her in front of others. And that's exactly what Nell did. So instead of hearing Nell out, she got defensive, which only made the situation worse. Fans have been calling it out online, saying Tisha always plays the victim when someone holds her accountable. Whether that's true or not, the optics weren't in her favor this time around. By the end of it all,